The quiet county road stretched ahead like a ribbon of darkness, broken only by the steady glow of her headlights and the soft hum of tires against pavement, and when the flashing red and blue lights bloomed behind her, she felt no surprise, only a familiar tightening in her chest, the instinctive awareness that this moment had been waiting for her long before she ever turned onto this road. So she slowed carefully, guided her car to the shoulder, and placed her hands high on the steering wheel where they could be clearly seen. Fingers relaxed but deliberate, every movement measured as if rehearsed, because in a way it was. Her voice calm when the officer approached, though his posture already carried accusation rather than inquiry, his gaze scanning her as though he were confirming a suspicion instead of initiating a lawful stop. And when he demanded her license and registration without offering even the courtesy of a reason, she complied smoothly, asking in a respectful tone what traffic law she had violated. A simple question that should have been routine, yet landed like an insult, transforming his expression from controlled to irritated in an instant, his professionalism cracking as if challenged by the idea that she had rights worth acknowledging, and instead of answering, he stepped back and called for backup, his voice sharp over the radio, and within minutes additional patrol cars rolled in, surrounding her vehicle with headlights that felt more like spotlights than safety, turning an ordinary stop into a scene thick with pressure, the air heavy not with concern, but with dominance. And when she was ordered out of the car, it wasn't framed as procedure but as command, her body guided by authority rather than law. Hands searched without explanation, questions thrown at her. Not about speeding or broken lights, but about where she was going, why she was in this neighborhood, whether she belonged there at all. Every word soaked in implication, every pause meant to unsettle, while passing drivers slowed, phones rising to record the unfolding tension. Silent witnesses capturing a story that had played out too many times before, and after what felt like hours but was only minutes, stretched by fear and frustration, she was finally released without ticket, without warning, without any acknowledgement that nothing had been wrong to begin with. Just a quiet dismissal that left behind the lingering message that her presence itself had been the offense. And later that night, in the stillness of her home, she replayed the footage again and again, not with anger but with focus, studying faces, timing, language, patterns, and curiosity pushed her beyond her own experience as she searched public records and complaint logs, discovering dozens of stops on that same road, all eerily similar. The same prolonged questioning, the same lack of clear violations, the same type of drivers pulled over again and again as if selected by an invisible rule, and buried in dispatch notes she found a repeated internal label, a quiet code never meant for public eyes, linking each encounter together like threads in a net, proof that this was not coincidence but design. And just as she began gathering everything into a timeline, something shifted, a subtle but chilling escalation when a contact inside the department warned her that her vehicle had been marked in their system as suspicious, a soft alert that gave officers an excuse to stop her on sight, and suddenly patrol cars appeared more often in her mirrors, slowing when she passed, turning around at intersections, watching, waiting, the harassment transforming into organized pursuit. No longer a single encounter, but a coordinated effort, as though the system itself had decided she was now a problem to be contained. And what began as an unjustified traffic stop had evolved into a campaign of surveillance, revealing that the road had never been about safety, never about the law, but about control, about deciding who belonged and who did not. And she understood then that she was no longer just a driver who had been pulled over. She had become a target inside a machine that thrived on silence. And the only way to stop it was to expose every moving part. What began as personal documentation soon turned into a calculated investigation, because every stop, Every delay, every radio call was logged with the precision of someone who understood that truth alone was not enough without proof. And as the encounters multiplied, so did the data. Timestamps lining up, officer names repeating, locations clustering like fingerprints of a system that could no longer hide behind coincidence, and when she finally shared the growing archive with federal investigators who had quietly been tracking similar complaints across the region, the reaction was immediate, because her recordings provided what statistics could not: living evidence of discrimination in action, tone, posture, escalation, all captured in real time. And within days, a meeting was arranged with department leadership under the pretense of resolving a misunderstanding, but she did not arrive alone, and when the chief sat across from her expecting a nervous citizen seeking peace, he instead faced a woman armed with evidence and accompanied by federal authority. And only after laying out the pattern, the secret codes, the identical stops, the targeted drivers, did she reveal her true position within the justice system, a disclosure that drained color from his face as the balance of power flipped instantly, because this was no longer a complaint, but a constitutional crisis, and oversight descended like a storm, body camera footage seized, dispatch systems audited, internal communications exposed, and as news broke, victims who had stayed silent for years finally stepped forward, each story echoing the same humiliation, the same fear, the same message of not belonging, and public outrage grew as videos spread across social platforms, forcing the county into the harsh light of accountability, and officers once protected by silence were suspended, then charged. Lawsuits followed in waves, settlements reached into the millions, policies rewritten overnight, and for the first time, the system that had hunted quietly was being hunted by law itself. Yet even as official discrimination decreased, new forms emerged, subtler, hidden behind technology, private security, and coded language that mirrored the same old prejudice in modern packaging, proving that injustice rarely disappears, but instead adapts. Learning how to survive reforms, and though the road she once feared could finally be driven without flashing lights in her mirror, she knew the victory was not an ending but a checkpoint in a longer fight, because justice was not a single courtroom moment but a continuous demand for transparency and courage, and the machine that once targeted her had been forced to bend, but it would always seek new ways to rise unless watched, challenged, and exposed again. And as she looked at the long trail of cases now reshaping the county, she understood that one woman's stop had become a catalyst for change, not because the system wanted to evolve, but because it had been forced to confront itself. And while the harassment had begun in silence, it ended in accountability loud enough to ensure it would never again be invisible.